Welcome to the KOFISI Connect podcast on wellness in the workplace. I'm your host, Soni Adriance, and today we're joined by wellness and leadership coach, Cece Ojany. Welcome, Cece.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Soni.
Yeah, it's great to have you here today. I wanted to start by asking, what is wellness in the workspace? When we're talking about wellness, what do we mean?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So for me, we have to start with a definition of well-being. And the definition that I like is, well-being is more than the absence of illness. Yeah, it's a state of being robust across a number of dimensions. And by robust, you can replace that word with, feeling strong, feeling healthy, feeling dynamic. So being robust across different dimensions, mentally, emotionally, physically, I include spiritually and professionally as well. And so wellness is now the plan or the strategy that you come up with so that you can experience well-being. It's the daily things that you do, not just when you're stressed, but just as the norm, as the standard. Yeah, so as an individual, it helps to have do's and don'ts. It helps to have routines that help you thrive personally and professionally, and it doesn't mean we all go to the gym. We have different things that we do to help us thrive. And I'm really big on that. I'm really big on people trusting themselves and going with what they prefer, because we all thrive in different ways. So being robust across those dimensions, if you're feeling a kind of malaise or if you're just not feeling okay, asking yourself, okay, is this a mental thing? Is it emotional? Is it my work? Am I feeling spiritually disconnected? And when I say spiritual, by the way, I don't necessarily mean religion only. I've coached atheists as well. So it's just that sense of connection to something bigger than you, an organizing force, feeling supported. But you can start thinking about those different dimensions and asking yourself, where is the issue? Yeah, because sometimes it just all, bleeds. One thing bleeds into another, and now you're confused and you've just got this general malaise and you're not sure what it is.
Well, you mentioned coaching, and you have the main protagonist coaching, and that's been going on for, you said, almost 10 years now?
Yeah. I started a long time ago.
And I feel like wellness and this whole buzz around being well is really big in pop culture currently. But you've been in this space for 10 years. Can you talk a little bit about how it's been developing and what you're seeing in terms of how wellness has been developing and how people are being mindful of it now in these different aspects of life?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So for me, when I started my coaching practice, I was coaching only women, and we were only talking about work, leadership, career. But that lasted really about 3 months before I realized, hang on a second, there's other stuff going on for this client that needs to be addressed. So what happened was the client started coming back, and they had not taken the actions that we had agreed they would take. And when I delved deeper into it, it inevitably came down to there's stuff going on in their life outside of work that is impacting them, their well-being, and they couldn't do the things we had said they were going to do in terms of their career or what have you. And so for me, my coaching practice then morphed into, okay, now we're talking about life outside of work as well. And then a few years in, I realized, well, this content also applies to men as well. And so for me, I got into this because of just responding to the feedback I was getting from my clients. And I'm really big on working on the whole person. So it doesn't matter how busy you are or how high up the hierarchy you are. I like to say to people, just remember you're dealing with a human being. On the other side of that email is a human being. It's not organization X, it's Susan that you deal with, it's Michael, it's Christopher, and that's a human being that has a whole world, a whole series of challenges, goals that they're trying to achieve. And so for me, I got into this space simply because I realized that was the most effective way to help a client get results. I actually don't think it's a passing thing. I don't think it's a fad, and I certainly hope that people don't see it that way. The pandemic years, 2020, 21, 22, transformed us irrevocably. People have realized my health is so important. People have seen that perhaps I'm out of balance when it comes to work. Like, so much has been revealed to us. That's why I use the word transformed. Like, we've changed from the inside out.
Well, it makes me think of how a lot of traditional jobs, you're spending 40 hours a week there. That's
At least.
Right, exactly. And that's a good chunk of your life. What are some indicators that you might be, quote unquote, unwell in the workspace? Like, because for example, myself, I go to the gym, I have a therapist, and so I feel seemingly well, but what are indicators that maybe in the workplace, in my career, that I might
might not be well?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. So let me start by defining those dimensions a little bit, and then the answer will reveal itself.
Okay.
So when it comes to your mental well-being, and of course it's really, really important for all our listeners to be aware that, you know, sometimes and quite often you do need to seek out that professional help. So I also say to people, you know, get a coach who has a coach. You know, is your coach also sorting out their stuff at their level? So it's important to get that professional help, whether it's a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or a coach, or a mentor. And we do different things in different ways. So with mental well-being, it's about your thoughts and your beliefs. What do you believe to be true? And this is where it all starts. I like to say to people that if I could only discuss one thing for the rest of my career, it would be this. Because your thoughts feed into your beliefs feed into your attitudes. Your attitudes will influence your behavior, and your behavior will influence the results you get. Okay? So for me, for example, many, many years ago, Soni, my health was just a by the way thing. You know, the belief I had was you work hard, you rise up the ranks, you get that corner office. This is the truth. Those were my beliefs. And then over the years, I came to realize, sometimes the hard way, I started changing those beliefs. So this mental well-being around thoughts and beliefs, and of course, you know, in the field of psychiatry, they're also looking at, you know, how your brain is working, chemicals and all that kind of stuff. It's all around that realm. So you want to make sure you have thoughts and beliefs that are helping you move forward rather than keeping you stuck.
So would this be inclusive of your self-talk in terms of how I refer to myself?
Absolutely.
And is this where something like affirmations would come in? Or is that a little bit different?
Well, affirmations live in that world. I have to admit, I'm not too big on affirmations, even though I know they help a lot of people. But you can go even deeper. But definitely affirmations live in that realm.
Okay.
And then when it comes to emotional well-being, it's about our emotions, of course. There is actually nothing wrong with an emotion like sadness or anger. But when we suppress these emotions is now when we can get enraged. And rage is the problem. So understanding that emotions are messengers. You know, if you're sitting down with somebody, they're saying all the right things, they're doing all the right things, but you're feeling funny, you're feeling some type of way. You want to interrogate that and not just ignore it. Yeah? And so I'll give you a very real example. A few years ago, at the start of the year, I wasn't feeling well rested. It was January, I wasn't feeling well rested. And I said to my clients, honestly, in the name of authenticity, professional integrity, I said, hey guys, you know, I don't feel well rested. Why don't we move our sessions closer to the end of the month? And they were actually quite happy with that, because at the start of the year, you're still scrambling, trying to get yourself together.
Yeah.
And so after my birthday, celebrated my birthday with my husband, and then I took myself to Nanyuki. And that's how I managed to avoid a terrorist attack, because I would have been in that building on that day. And so it's a very real example of, wow, I was somewhere else simply because I chose to look after my well-being and to be honest about, I'm not feeling okay, I'm not feeling rested. And this speaks to the question you asked earlier, where you're like, well, how would you know?
Right.
It's things like you're spinning your wheels in your head. You know, there's a lot of just, your thoughts are not progressing. You're kind of just stuck spinning your wheels. It's when you live in the extremes of emotions. So anger is fine. Anger is when you feel angry, that's just information you're getting about a situation. But when you're constantly enraged, that tells you something.
Well,
right?
What are ways that you could protect your emotional well-being in a workplace? For example, I've worked in places where I've had a manager, boss, leader who has their own emotional anger, what I would consider
challenges.
Issues.
Yeah, they're
and
human.
When they interact with me, it can be sometimes rude or make me feel angry, upset, hurt.
Yeah.
But I have to interact with this person on a daily basis, and they're my direct line manager.
Yeah.
So in a situation like that, what are ways that I can protect myself emotionally, but also potentially have a conversation about enforcing boundaries and...
Yeah. Well, this speaks to what I was saying earlier around your thoughts. Yeah. So say, for example, the person you're reporting to has said something and you found the tone sharp or you found it inappropriate. You want to start by just checking your thoughts on that. Is it true that my boss Cece despises me? Is it true that she's always had it in for me? Or could it be a case of Cece just having a bad day? Yeah, so you want to check your thoughts, because your thoughts can really lead you to some dark places that you don't want to go, and you start projecting onto other people. Everybody has a bad day, right? Now, to be honest with you, this is where a robust HR department comes in really, really handy. And HR is more than just payroll. It's more than just payroll. If we can empower our HR departments, the person that is looking after people, that is going to really help you in an organizational setting. Yeah. Now, I know for some small organizations, they don't have an HR person, but one of the things I advise clients to do is to get a consultant to begin with. Because what ends up happening is the managers are now also trying to manage people's feelings, emotions. This person has just experienced a trauma. I don't know what to do. They're my direct report. And it makes their job very, very difficult. So as early as possible, you want to assign that people person who is going to look after people. And in the example you gave, so you're minding your thoughts. You're just checking in with yourself. What am I making this mean? What did I make that comment mean? What did I make that look mean? But if it's a case of, this has happened one too many times, we are being spoken to in an inappropriate way, you want to have a people person that you can speak to about this. And that HR person can then know how to give that leader feedback. Like, this is the feedback that we're getting. And it's not enough to just wait for quarterly 360-degree reviews.
Right.
People are interacting on a daily basis. Yeah.
So if you are experiencing this on a daily basis, one example of something that you can do is just take a moment to reflect on your thoughts.
Yeah. Make sure your thoughts aren't making the situation worse. Make sure you're not saying things like, well, I must be the problem. Maybe it's me, because that's not helpful. You want to be in a headspace that makes you go, let me take some helpful action on this. Whether that action is talking to my mentor, whether that action is speaking about it to HR and looking for solutions. So even when I say talking to someone about it, one of the reasons I really love coaching is very results oriented. So there is a little bit of venting time allowed before the coach says, okay, but now let's talk about what are the tactics, what are the strategies, what can we do about this? One of the things that's really helpful for people to know is you bring your childhood with you into the workplace, which is why processes like coaching and therapy are so helpful, no matter your age, your gender, or whichever part of the world you come from. And so, for example, again, I can just share my story. I'm the last born in a family of 6 very strong personalities. And so I didn't know this when I was a young employee in my 20s. I didn't know that I had this chip on my shoulder about being told what to do. Yeah, you can imagine. So I'm in the workplace and I'm not being rude, but there's always this burning in my solar plexus, like, don't tell me what to do. I got this. Don't tell me what to do.
Right.
And so, see, that's a Cece problem, which my very first coach revealed to me.
And at the end of the day, your manager will tell you what to do.
Exactly. You will be told what to do. So, and there's so many variants of this. You know, I know people, for example, who, you know, their dads left when they were very young, and without realizing it, they had kind of transformed their bosses into father figures, mother figures, and then you inevitably get let down because you've put this boss on a pedestal. But your coach or your therapist can help you realize that that's not appropriate. Let's talk about why this is getting to you. Let's talk about the deeper reasons this is happening. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, do you find that when you are addressing your wellness in the workspace, it can help you with maybe some of the barriers or struggles you found previously in terms of getting promotions or getting to the job that you want to get to, because maybe it helps clear your path a little bit with your own well-being?
Absolutely. When organizations pay for people to get coaching and people to get therapy, I always remind my clients that this is such a blessing and such a privilege, because there are many organizations that say, no, we're not going there. We don't have the budget. We're not going there. I mean, the insights that clients get that they then take with them to the workplace are so powerful, you know? And so that's why I'm saying you have to look at the individual 360. And I'm very honest with my clients. I say when an organization is paying for their leadership team, because I work with leaders, to get coaching, I'm very candid with them and I say, listen, we are going to talk about life outside of work. And that is really important because there are some obstacles there that are interfering with this person's performance. So let me give you a very basic example. The number of conversations I've had with clients who are frustrated in the home because the different employees they have in the home are not performing at a level they want. So I remember with one client, for example, she sits at her desk at 9 a.m. She's already frazzled, irritated, frustrated because the nanny has not been empowered enough and she's doing the nanny's job. So now it's getting the kids ready and da-da-da-da-da. So 9 a.m. she's sitting at her desk and she's already tired and frustrated.
And not fully present.
Not fully present. So it becomes about, okay, let's talk about how you can empower the nanny. Is she the right nanny? You know, et cetera, et cetera. So it's about problem solving. It's about problem solving. And so what is the benefit? You know, why would an organization pay for these things for their people? Well, number one, you want to have the kind of culture that people talk about. Let people go out there and talk about how great the culture in your organization is in a very real way, not fake stuff that you might read in a blog, but in a very real way. I work at this organization and I love the culture.
Yeah, people are your best brand ambassadors.
Exactly. So that's one reason. And the second reason is it affects the bottom line. It affects the bottom line. I perform at a much higher level, as do my clients, when they're feeling well.
Right.
Yeah. And, you know, I talked about one of the other dimensions being professional well-being. And the question there is, why do you wake up every morning to go to this particular job? I say to all the leaders I work with, ask your direct reports that question. Why are you here and not anywhere else? And you'll get to learn about this person's values, what's motivating them, and you can play a very big role in helping that person with their growth. Just this morning, I had a session with a client overseas, and we talked about whether he was willing to be like an unofficial mentor to the young men who are directly reporting to him. Where, yes, we are talking about work, but we're also talking about this other stuff that's going on for you with your mom and your grandma, etc., etc. And he was up to the task, which is really, again, it's another blessing.
Yeah.
Having a boss who's willing to go there with you. Now, you don't turn into their mom or their dad or their therapist.
No.
But just that human-to-human connection.
Absolutely. And whenever I've had a manager who seems to consider my humanity, it's really meaningful.
It's meaningful, and you want to do more work.
Yeah.
So many of us have been in that situation where your boss is asking you to go the extra mile, and because of your rich, robust, and healthy relationship, you say, yeah, sure.
You're happy to.
Yeah, you're happy to.
So let's say you're looking at the next work environment, you're looking at the next place that you're going to get employed.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure that wellness is something that they consider.
Yeah.
And you're at a job interview, and at the end of the interview, the interviewer asks you, do you have any questions for me? What are some good questions you can ask somebody to get an indication of what that workplace wellness might be like?
Yeah, I love this. It is, I love that question. It is such an important thing to consider. I say to people, when you're looking for a job, you're not in the position of lesser than. That organization is desperate to fill that role. What it means is there's 4 people doing the job of 5. They're desperate to fill that role.
Right.
And so you're actually equal. A lot of people don't understand that, but when you're auditioning, when you're interviewing, you're actually equal. You need one another, right? They're looking for something, you're looking for something. And so it's really important to ask open questions like, can you tell me about the culture in this organization? Yeah, what are the values of this organization? How do you express those values? Because if you just say, what are the values, we'll tell you integrity, honesty, professionalism, but we like to have fun.
Yes.
But how is that expressed? How is it actually happening? And you also want to ask about the person you'll be directly reporting to. You know, okay, so you tell me my future boss is Soni. What's her leadership style? How does she like to work? See, I advise clients to do that, especially if you get a new boss. Go to that person and ask, how do you like to work? Yeah? You might have the kind of boss that wants to know what you're doing every day.
Yeah.
Yeah? That's okay. Let him or her know what you're doing every day. You might have a boss who has a hands-off approach. We call it the laissez-faire coaching style. That boss is more hands-off. They trust that you know what you're doing. But having those conversations at the start will really help you and your direct reports. See, it goes both ways. Will really help you and your direct reports start on a healthy note.
Yeah.
Rather than, these are the goals, these are the obligations we have. I'm going to get you started on this. Sit down, have a conversation. A job of mine many years ago when I was living in Australia, the CEO would take every new employee out for lunch, and we would just chat. So we got to chat about football or soccer for the Americans. We got to chat about football, and he was like, yeah, that's really cool. You know, we have a group here who likes football, and we go watch games and all this kind of thing. And I've never forgotten that all these years later.
Yeah.
You just took the time to connect with new recruits on a human-to-human level.
Absolutely, and at the end of the day, these are new relationships that you're forming.
Yeah.
So similarly to your romantic or friendship relationships, where you tell them how you want to receive them and how they wish to receive you, those things are important. And even when you're talking about...
It clears the way.
Yeah. And even when you're talking about management styles, it makes me think about, you might know how best you can be managed as an employee, and maybe even being able to communicate that upwards to say, I know you have a hands-off approach, but I need a check-in.
Yes.
Because without a check-in, I don't know if I'm doing well.
Yes. So can we meet halfway and, okay, if you have a hands-off approach and I need a check-in, I don't then ask for a daily check-in. That might be too much. But, every other day. And all this requires courage and vulnerability. That word vulnerability still bothers a lot of people. But here's the reality. Every time you step out of your house, you're vulnerable. You don't know what's going to happen. You're vulnerable. So vulnerability does not mean weakness. So the term I like to use, I'm like, listen, if you don't like the term vulnerability, let's just talk about it as connecting on a human to human level. One of something that I did many years ago, before I really got into coaching, in terms of receiving coaching and giving coaching, was when my dad was unwell. I just kept quiet. I didn't tell anybody in the workplace. And eventually it got to a point where I was like, oh my God, I need to let them know that I'm not okay. And when I did tell the HR lady, she was like, okay, Cece, thank you so much for telling us. I did then tell my direct reports, and people had noticed my behavior change, and I was oblivious. They were like, yeah, you stopped having lunch with us. You would just go off and have lunch on your own. And another employee confessed that her stepmom was also unwell. So interesting things can happen even in the workplace when we get vulnerable and we just share on a human to human level.
Yeah, and it also allows you to for other people to give you some sympathy or empathy and support.
And support, which is really, really important. Something that's also very valuable for organizations to be aware of is something that parents of young children are aware of, a phenomenon that's happening where the crop of humans being born, they are so radically different to us and to the older generation. We have a joke with my friends where we talk about how, these days we are explaining to our children and expounding on what we would like them to do. Whereas when we were coming up, did you dare even ask? Like,
no.
Mom, why? She'd look at you like, what?
I told you what to do.
Because I said so?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? That actually doesn't work, Soni, with kids these days. It literally does not work. The schools, my daughter's school, for example, is very, very blatant about the fact that they are nurturing critical thinkers. So I have to have answers for my daughter, and she's turning 6 in May. I have to have answers for my daughters, because we all remember that moment when you were talking to an adult and you kind of felt like it was BS, but you didn't really know. And now the kids will just call you out on it. So with the newer crop of wonderful humans who are entering into organizations, you're going to have to change or they will leave. And it's an employee's world right now because of this work from home, because of what people realized during the pandemic years. It's an employee's world now, Organizations are more comfortable with distributed teams, teams that are distributed all around the world. I had a lot of clients last year they were the only person in Kenya in the organization.
Interesting.
And so if you want your organization to last, if you want your legacy to be about more than just the bottom line, these are the sorts of things you need to be thinking of. And that includes how the different genders, what the different genders need in order to thrive.
Right.
If I started working with you when I was 30, but I'm 32 now and I've just had a baby, I'm a different person.
Yeah.
Whether I'm a man or a woman,
right.
I'm a different person because now I've got a child at home.
And different priorities.
Exactly.
If you're an employee listening to this right now and thinking, I'd really love to introduce the concept of wellness into my workspace, or maybe address it if it's already there, but you can see areas in which it's lacking. What are ways to bring the conversation forward and resources that people can use to help explain what wellness in the workplace is to maybe an HR representative, their line manager, whomever? Yeah,
that's a great question. And it is such a great way to add value, no matter who you are in the organization. So like with all new ideas you want to introduce, you want to make sure you've done your research. The internet will help you. What are the benefits of having a wellness strategy in an organization? Employee retention, et cetera, et cetera. The information is now out there, thank goodness. So do your research, ask for a meeting with HR or whoever who's in charge, or even just your boss. Mm-hmm. and making that suggestion, like, how can we make this a part of what we do? It's a part of our culture, how we do things here. Now, if you're very lucky, the leader you're talking to will get it, and you can work on it together. And if you're the one suggesting it, you also want to be one of its champions. Like this, I don't want to just suggest and then run away and leave it up to whoever.
Yeah.
I want to suggest, and I want to contribute in an ongoing way to this new initiative. So if you're lucky, your boss will get it, the HR person will get it. But you also need to think about what are the potential obstacles. So this is part of sales. I call sales, for me, sales is trying to get a yes from people.
Yeah.
And if you want to get a yes from people, you have to think about what their concerns are as well. Yeah. And so the first concern is, how much is it going to cost? And that's a very real concern. Like, don't roll your eyes and go, it's always about money with these people. Yeah, for the company to survive, we need to be profitable, right?
Business.
So you can start surfacing some of those concerns, called black hat thinking, where you have an idea, it's a great idea, but you've got to think ahead of all the potential obstacles you might face. And so if it's a question of money, for example, you can suggest things like, well, why don't we start small?
Right.
Why don't we have someone come and do a talk once every couple of weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then see how that is benefiting people. And this is why you need to continue being a contributor to this initiative. Mm-hmm. You need to be interested in this initiative. Don't just suggest or send an email and we should have a wellness plan, send an email and then, people can't find you.
Yeah.
But it is such a great way to add value if this is an area that you're interested in. And when it comes to building better habits, either individually or collectively as a group, as an organization, as a team, you start small and you build from there. Mm-hmm. Get somebody to do a freebie talk and then get people to do paid talks for longer time, like 2 hours.
Maybe even just going to your whoever, if you're at an organization where people provide lunch, figuring out like what are healthy lunches we can start bringing in to keep us energized throughout the workday.
Exactly. Things like that. It's, it sounds corny, but it's really cool actually if people can gather around outdoor activities that they enjoy. Mm-hmm. Let's start a hiking club for all the people who love hiking. Let's start a chess club to all the people who like chess. And to have it be genuine, it's not, Cece, come and join the chess club. No. Yeah. Chess lovers unite, come join the chess club. We meet, and you don't make it onerous for people. If you want to get a yes, you have to keep it really simple in the beginning, and then as it develops, it can get more complex from there. But please start with your research first.
Right.
It comes back to why. Why should we do this again? Mm-hmm. It sounds like a good idea in your head, and that's great, but the person you're talking to is not clear. Mm-hmm. So you need to start with why.
And I think that's an interesting addition of these recreational things you can do together with people in your office. Because I agree, anytime I've had those connections with people that I worked with, it's an opportunity to see their humanity. And it's an opportunity where you get to learn more about them outside of the workplace. Yeah,
and that enhances the team's culture or the organization's culture. So we're not doing fake bonding at the 2-day training. Yeah. It's a group of people who genuinely like each other. You don't have to be best friends with anyone. But, this idea of coming to a workplace where you don't feel you have any connections, you don't feel you have any friends, that is going to negatively impact your well-being. And, those are examples of, say, for example, if we start a hiking group, that's looking after your physical well-being, which is very, very important. But different organizations do different things. If their budget is there, you allocate, say, 2 therapy sessions. We have a list of therapists, we have a list of coaches, and it's open to you to take advantage of them whenever you want. You just let us know. Of course, it's confidential. At the end of the month, we pay that coach, we pay that therapist. Mm-hmm. Some people are given a budget around personal and professional development, so they can seek out their own therapists and coaches. Mm-hmm. The budget lasts a year. They chip away at it throughout the year. These are all some of the things you can do to make a genuine impact on people's well-being. But you know, we are at work. One of the reasons why I don't like using the word balance is because we are at work most days of the week. So I prefer to use the word work-life integration, where you find work with groups that are sharing values that are similar to yours. You find work in organizations that have people in them that you would like to hang out with. I mean, I'm a business owner, and I don't just say yes to any client. I'm old school. I like liking my clients.
Yeah.
And so for the business owners who are listening, it's not just about saying yes, especially if you're a service provider and things can get intimate that way, like you're providing a service. You wanna work with people you like working with, because it can be extremely distressing having that quote unquote difficult client or having that quote unquote difficult customer. When I was 19 years old, many years ago, I got my first job. I was selling fragrance in a high-end department store. And there is something that we were told in our training that forever set me up, and I'm so grateful for this. The manager that was leading the training said, don't argue with the customers, just escalate to your manager, because we want to make sure that you guys are okay.
Yeah.
That blew my mind, and it really just set me up to have a great experience as a 19-year-old. And this is a high-end department store, so you're working with very finicky people. They like things a certain way. You can't just come at them with your nonsense ideas, suggestions, and solutions. They know what they like. They're wealthy. But that just really set us up nicely, knowing that your manager would have your back, and if something is way over your pay grade, don't worry about it. Just escalate it. Ask your supervisor to come down and help you, and they will help you. So there are the small things, and then there are the big things we can do to help our employees to perform. And I loved working there, and I did make some pretty crazy sales for them. But again, it's because I wanted to, I liked the people I was working with, etc., etc.
I mean, the fact that you remember it this many years later, it definitely made an impact.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up here, I was wondering if you had any final words of advice in terms of wellness in the workplace, and then if you could also share where people can find you.
Yeah.
I know you have a podcast, and of course you do your coaching, so so that people can maybe be in touch if this is something that they want to explore further.
Thank you. So what can I add? Well, it's about, okay, so you need to look at it at an individual level. So you and what works for you. And then there's the collective, the different groups or communities that you're in. So what is your own wellness plan, right? Because at the end of the day, even the organization can only support you. You've got to take a bigger chunk of responsibility for your well-being. What is your wellness plan? What works for you? One of the biggest mistakes I made before I was involved in coaching, receiving and giving coaching, was I would wake up in the morning and I would reach for my phone. So already my focus and my energy has gone to, the latest thing this hot celebrity is doing, and then it would be the emails. So again, you're sitting at your desk and your brain is already fried.
Yep.
Your brain is already full of all the nonsense that you've been checking out on social media. So little things like, I don't do that anymore. When I wake up, I'll do a meditation, I'll stretch. Now I have a daughter, so I have to wake up just a little bit earlier if I want that alone time. So, what are the little things and the big things you can do for yourself on a daily basis that will help you to thrive and feel robust in those areas we talked about? When I was in my 30s, I'm 42 now. When I was in my 30s, I didn't want to go to the gym, and I gave myself permission. I preferred working with a personal trainer. So we would go to Karura Forest, for example. But I turned 40 and I wanted to get back into swimming. So I found myself a gym with a pool. And now I like going to the gym. So it's also about, again, it comes down to what will help me thrive? What are the things I need to do to look after myself?
Taking ownership.
Yeah, taking ownership. So have your individual wellness plan. or program, stick to those routines. Jotting stuff down instead of trying to retain all this information in your head also just gives your brain a break. Bottom line, what will work for you? That's really, really important because you've got to take responsibility. A bigger chunk of responsibility for your well-being rests with you.
Absolutely.
Even your spouse can only support you. And asking for help is a wise thing to do. Some people are still reluctant to ask for help. Asking for help is your way of saying, I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up. I want to keep going. I want to keep going in this job. I want to keep going in this business. I want to keep going, so ask for help from professionals who can help you.
I love that. And if people want help from you, where can they find you?
Yes, so you can find me on LinkedIn, Cece Ojany, so that's CECEOJANY. You can find me on LinkedIn. I share a lot there. You can also find me on my website, themainprotagonist.com. I'm always asked about that name. It's my way of reminding people that you play the role of the main protagonist in your life. You're the lead in the story of your life. And I just wanted to remind people of that when they engage with my website, themainprotagonist.com. The podcast is the Authentic Leadership Podcast. I talk about leadership. I talk about well-being a lot. You can find it anywhere podcasts are found, Spotify, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud. So the Authentic Leadership Podcast, or you can just Google Cece Ojany Becker or Cece Ojany, and I'll pop up. And on Instagram too. So yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been really great.